The warning klaxons aboard the GSV Harmonious Convergence had been wailing for 3 standard cycles, and Ambassador Zethgri was beginning to develop what humans might call a headache if the Velthrin possessed such primitive neural responses. Instead, their crystalline neural matrices simply registered increasing disharmony as the situation deteriorated. Ambassador, the human delegation has bonded with the Skarn combat units, reported Communications Officer Yilthek, their voice carrying undertones of bewilderment that translated poorly through the universal interface. Zethgri's 6 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of profound confusion among their species. Clarify bonded, officer. They appear to have made friends with them, sir. Through the observation decks, reinforced transparent aluminum, Zethgri could see the impossible scene playing out in Docking Bay 7. 3 Skarn warriors, each standing 3 meters tall, armed with enough firepower to level a city block, and possessing the disposition of a rabid vortex beast, were sitting in a circle with the lone human diplomat. The human appeared to be scratching behind their auditory sensors. By the eternal frequencies, Zethgri whispered, what manner of creature have we invited aboard our vessel? The human in question was Dr. Maya Chun, a xenobiologist who had volunteered for the first official diplomatic contact between the Terra Alliance and the Galactic Cooperation Council. Her personnel file indicated she was completely unremarkable by human standards. Average height, average build, with a typical human propensity for what their species termed stubbornness. What the file had failed to mention was her apparently supernatural ability to form emotional connections with literally anything possessing a nervous system. Dr. Chun, Zethgri's voice crackled through the comm system into the docking bay. Please step away from the Skarn warriors. They are ... unpredictable. Maya looked up, still absently rubbing what she had identified as a pleasure response node behind a lead Skarn sensor array. The warrior designated Gritthol the Bone Crusher was making a sound that their translation matrix couldn't properly categorize, though it bore an alarming resemblance to what humans called purring. They're just scared, Maya replied, her voice carrying that peculiar human quality of certainty that had baffled xenopsychologists for decades. Look at their body language, defensive posturing, elevated stress hormones, rapid sensory scanning. They're in an unfamiliar environment, surrounded by potential predators. Classic anxiety response. Dr. Chun, interjected Security Chief Vorth, a member of the warrior caste Krekstar species. Those are not anxious creatures. They are apex predators responsible for the devastation of 17 worlds. Please, 17 worlds they were, forced to attack by the hegemony, Maya interrupted, still maintaining her gentle contact with Gruk-Thul. I've read the classified reports. The Skarn were enslaved, their home system strip mined, their young held hostage to ensure compliance. When an apex predator attacks everything in sight, you don't look at their claws, you look at who's holding the leash. The wisdom in her words sent a ripple of unease through the observation deck. The Skarn liberation had been the messiest conflict in recent galactic history, with the former slave soldiers scattering to the far reaches of space after breaking their chains. Most species shot Skarn on sight, too afraid of their conditioning to risk peaceful contact. Gruk-Thul's massive head tilted, a gesture that, through some miracle of convergent evolution, looked remarkably like curiosity across a dozen different species. Human Maya speaks truth words, the warrior rumbled, his voice like grinding tectonic plates. We carry death scars inside. No trust for sky travelers. But you trust me? Maya asked gently. The Skarn's 4 secondary eyes focused on her, while his primary eyes continued scanning for threats. Human Maya shows no fear, offers comfort touch, pack behavior. We understand pack behavior. Ambassador Zethgri felt their neural matrix practically vibrate with confusion. In 3 cycles of desperate negotiations, the Galactic Council's best diplomats had failed to establish meaningful dialogue with any Skarn group. This human had walked into the bay, sat down with them, and somehow triggered what appeared to be a breakthrough in less than 1 standard rotation. How? Zethgri muttered, then realized they had activated the comm. Maya glanced up at the observation deck. Sorry, Ambassador, did you say something? How did you know to approach them this way? Maya's expression grew thoughtful, and she continued her soothing motions along Grekthul's sensor array. On Earth, we have this thing called pack bonding. It's probably an evolutionary holdover from when we were hunter-gatherers. We instinctively try to form social connections with anything that shows the right behavioral cues. Most species think it's a weakness, but she gestured to the increasingly relaxed Skarn warriors. Sometimes it's exactly what someone needs. You formed pack bonds with hostile alien warriors within one rotation, Zethkri stated flatly. Well, when you put it like that, it sounds weird, Maya laughed. A sound that made several species on the observation deck step back from the speakers. Human laughter had that effect too close to predator vocalizations for comfort. But look at it from their perspective. They've been running from every civilized species for cycles. No one tries to understand them. No one offers them safety. They're exhausted, traumatized, and desperate for someone to see them as individuals instead of weapons. The second Skarn warrior, identified as Threx the World Ender, gradually moved closer to Maya, his massive clawed hand capable of punching. Through starship hull plating hesitantly reached toward her, Maya didn't flinch. She extended her own hand, allowing the warrior to investigate her strange alien anatomy. Threx's claw, each digit longer than Maya's forearm, delicately traced the lines of her palm. Soft skin, Threx rumbled. No armor scales. No weapon claws. How does human Maya survive? We're persistence hunters, Maya explained, as if discussing the weather. We don't need claws or armor. We just never give up. Ever. It drives other species crazy. Persistence, the third Skarn, designated Crixel the Starbreaker, repeated the word as if tasting it. Like pack hunt behavior. Exactly like pack hunt behavior, Maya confirmed. We evolved to work together, to support each other, to never abandon a pack member. That's probably why I can't look at you three and see monsters. I see pack members who've been hurt and need help. The observation deck had fallen silent. Ambassador Zethkri watched in fascination as the human continued her impossible work of diplomacy. Other species approached first contact with careful protocols, extensive preparation, and layers of protective measures. This human had walked in, sat down, and started treating traumatized warrior slaves like injured puppies, and it was working. Ambassador, Communications Officer Yilthek whispered, I'm receiving priority transmissions from the Hegemony fleet. They're demanding we surrender the Skarn warriors for reconditioning. Zethkri's crystalline features hardened. How far out is the Hegemony force? 18 rotations at maximum burn. In the docking bay, Maya's head snapped up. Her enhanced human hearing had caught fragments of the hushed conversation. Hegemony? They're coming here? The three Skarn warriors instantly shifted into combat stance, their relaxed postures evaporating as centuries of conditioning kicked in. Grekthul's weapon systems began cycling online with an ominous whine. No, Maya said firmly, placing herself between the warriors and the exit. No running, no fighting, not this time. Human Maya not understand, Grekthul growled, his voice carrying harmonics of barely controlled rage. Hegemony comes, we become Deathbringers again. Pack bonding not strong enough to break mind chains. Maya's expression shifted, and for the first time since boarding the Galactic Council vessel, she looked genuinely angry. It was a subtle change, a tightening around her eyes, a slight forward lean in her posture, but every predator species in the galaxy would have recognized it immediately. The hell it isn't, she said quietly. Ambassador Zethkri had lived for 437 standard cycles. In that time, they had witnessed the rise and fall of 3 interstellar empires, served as chief negotiator in 47 separate conflicts, and prided themselves on understanding the behavioral patterns of over 200 sentient species. They had never seen anything like what Dr. Maya Chun was doing. Officer Yulthik, Zethkri said, their voice carefully modulated to hide their growing concern. Please run a full psychological evaluation on our human guest. I need to understand if this behavior is typical for her species. Through the observation deck's viewing panel, they watched as Maya stood nose to nose with Grekthul, the Skarn warrior looming over her like a living weapon of mass destruction. The size difference was almost comical. Maya barely reached the middle of the warrior's torso, but her body language suggested She was prepared to physically prevent 3 genetically engineered super soldiers from leaving if necessary. The preliminary scans are interesting, Ambassador, Yilfek reported. Her stress hormones are elevated, but not from fear. Her brain chemistry indicates she's experiencing what humans call protective rage. Her metabolic indicators suggest she's preparing for physical confrontation. She weighs perhaps 60 kilograms, Security Chief Vorth observed dryly. The smallest Skarn warrior masses at least 400. What does she expect to accomplish? I think, Zethkri said slowly, that's the wrong question. The right question is, what does she believe she can accomplish? And based on her behavior, I suspect the answer is anything necessary. In the docking bay, Maya had moved into what human military manuals termed protective stance, positioned between potential threats and whatever she was defending. In this case, she appeared to be defending the Skarn from themselves. Griktho, she said, her voice carrying the particular tone humans used when addressing frightened animals. Look at me, not at the threats, not at the exit, at me. The massive warrior's primary eyes fixed on her face. Human Maya should run. When hegemony comes, we become not ourselves. We hurt pack friends. Always happens. Has anyone ever asked you not to? Maya's question was so simple that it took a moment for its implications to register. Ask us ... not to. Threx's rumbling voice carried a note of confusion that translated across species barriers. Has anyone ever looked at you when the conditioning kicked in and said, I trust you to fight it? The silence in the docking bay was profound. 3 of the galaxy's most feared warriors stared at a human who barely came up to their chest plates, as if she had just proposed something fundamentally impossible. The mind chains are absolute, Crixel said finally. Hegemony scientists spent centuries perfecting them. When trigger codes are broadcast, we become weapons. No choice, no resistance. Maya's expression shifted, and Ambassador Zethkri recognized it as the look humans got when someone told them something was impossible. It was not, the ambassador reflected, a particularly comforting expression to see on a human face. Tell me about the conditioning, Maya said, settling into a cross-legged position that somehow managed to look both casual and immovable. How does it work? Pain learning, Griktho explained, his massive form settling into a crouch. It brought him closer to Maya's eye level. From hatching, we are taught that disobedience equals agony, that hesitation equals death of clutch mates, that the only safety comes from perfect compliance. Classical conditioning, Maya murmured, her expression thoughtful. Pavlovian response, patterns reinforced through trauma bonding. Brutal, but effective. She looked up at the 3 warriors, but not unbreakable. Ambassador Zethkri activated the communication system. Dr. Chun, I feel I should inform you that the hegemony's conditioning protocols have never been successfully overcome. The Galactic Council has invested millions of credits in research. The Galactic Council, Maya interrupted, has never tried pack bonding. Dr. Chun, Zethkri's voice carried the weight of accumulated diplomatic experience. Emotional attachment is not a proven method for overcoming neurochemical conditioning. Maya's laugh was short and sharp. Ambassador, with respect, your species doesn't understand emotional attachment. None of the council species do. You form alliances based on mutual benefit, social contracts based on logical exchange, cooperative agreements based on calculated advantage. She reached out and placed her hand on Griktho's massive claw. Humans form bonds based on something your translation matrices don't have a word for, which is love. The word dropped into the conversation like a gravitational anomaly, warping everything around it. Not romantic love, not sexual attraction, not even familial affection. Pack love, the absolute, irrational, unconditional commitment to another being's welfare, regardless of personal cost. Threx made a sound that the translation system couldn't parse. It was somewhere between a whimper and a growl, and it carried overtones of desperate hope. Human Maya, Griktho said slowly, pack love is weakness, makes warriors ineffective. Hegemony taught us this. The hegemony taught you that because they were afraid of it, Maya replied firmly. Pack bonds don't make you weak, they make you uncontrollable. A pack-bonded human will do impossible things to protect their pack. We'll fight enemies we can't defeat, endure pain that should kill us, solve problems that have no solutions. She stood, bringing herself face to face with the crouching warrior, and will never, ever abandon a pack member. The communication system crackled as Security Chief Vorth's voice filled the bay. Dr. Chun, the hegemony fleet will be within weapons range in 16 rotations. If you cannot convince the Skarn to cooperate with our defensive measures, I'm not trying to convince them to cooperate, Maya said, her eyes still locked on Grekthul's primary visual sensors. I'm trying to convince them that they have a choice. Ambassador Zethkri felt their neural matrix pulse with something that might have been either admiration or terror. Dr. Chun, what exactly are you proposing? Maya's smile was sharp and predatory, and every being on the observation deck took an involuntary step backward. I'm proposing we give the hegemony a demonstration of what happens when you threaten a human's pack. Grekthul's 4 secondary eyes widened. Human Maya means to fight hegemony fleet. Human Maya means to protect her pack, she corrected. The fighting is just incidental. The next 6 rotations aboard the GSV Harmonious. Convergence challenged every assumption Ambassador Zethkri had ever held about interspecies cooperation, human psychology, and the fundamental nature of impossible situations. It began with Maya's first request. I need access to the ship's fabrication base, she announced to the senior staff, as if she were asking for directions to the hygiene facilities. Dr. Chun, Commander Veltar of the Altarian Navy, pointed out with military precision, you are a xenobiologist. The fabrication bays contain industrial-grade matter converters, military specification composite molders, and classified council technologies. I'm also a human with 3 pack-bonded Skarn who are about to face psychological trauma that could shatter their minds, Maya replied calmly. I need tools. What kind of tools? Security Chief Vorth asked suspiciously. Maya's smile was the sort that made experienced warriors check their sidearms. The kind that don't exist yet. 6 rotations later, the fabrication bay looked like the result of a collision between a weapons development lab and a veterinary clinic. Maya had somehow convinced or possibly hypnotized the ship's technical staff to help her create devices that violated several fundamental principles of engineering common sense. Explain to me again, Ambassador Zethkri said, staring at the collection of impossible contraptions, how these implements are supposed to counteract centuries of psychological conditioning. Maya gestured to the centerpiece of her creation, a headset that appeared to be part advanced neural interface, part sensory enhancement device, and part something that might have been a very sophisticated pet toy. The hegemony's conditioning works by triggering specific neurochemical responses to audio-visual cues. It's brilliant but limited. It assumes the subject will be isolated when the triggers are activated. And these devices? Pack amplification technology, Maya said, as if that explained anything. If the conditioning tries to isolate them psychologically, this will let them feel the pack bond even more strongly. Commander Veltar examined the technical specifications with growing bewilderment. Dr. Chun, these devices will create a direct neural link between you and the Skarn warriors. The feedback could kill you. Only if I try to resist the connection. Maya shrugged. Humans don't resist pack bonds. We embrace them. You could lose your individual consciousness, Chief Medical Officer Threndi warned. Their scaled features, tight with concern. The Skarn neural structure is fundamentally different from human cognition. The integration protocols will work. Maya interrupted with characteristic human certainty, because pack bonds transcend species barriers. It's not about compatible brain chemistry. It's about compatible hearts. Ambassador Zethkri watched as the 3 Skarn warriors examined their own versions of Maya's devices. Each headset had been customized for their unique neural architecture, but the basic principle remained the same. Instead of facing the hegemony's psychological assault alone, they would face it as part of an unbreakable pack bond with a species that didn't know the meaning of surrender. Human Maya, Grekthul said, holding his device with surprising delicacy. Pack bonds work both ways. If we fall to conditioning, you feel our pain thoughts. Our rage madness could damage your soft mind. Maya met his gaze steadily. Grekthul, if you fall to the conditioning, I'll be right there with you, and I'll keep reminding you who you really are until you remember. Threx made that untranslatable sound again. Half whimper, half growl, all desperate hope. Human Maya truly believes pack bonds stronger than mind chains? I believe, Maya said with absolute conviction, that love is the most powerful force in the universe. The hegemony understands fear, pain, and control. They have no defense against something they can't comprehend. Ambassador Zethkri activated the communication system. Dr. Chun, I have an update on the hegemony fleet. 12 heavy cruisers, 4 dreadnoughts, and a command vessel equipped with the latest conditioning broadcast arrays. Even if your pack bonding technology works, how do you propose to deal with that level of firepower? Maya's expression shifted into what the ambassador was learning to recognize as her problem-solving mode, a particular combination of intense focus and creative chaos that seemed to be uniquely human. Tell me about the Skarn's military capabilities, she said, turning to the 3 warriors. Crixel's combat system cycled nervously. We are living weapons, human Maya. Each of us carries firepower equivalent to small starship. Our armor can withstand direct hits from plasma cannons. Our sensors can track targets across star systems. We were designed to be perfect soldiers. But you've been running instead of fighting, Maya observed. Why? The 3 warriors exchanged glances, a behavior they had learned from their human pack leader. Grikthal spoke for all of them, because perfect soldiers follow orders. When conditioning activates, we become extensions of hegemony. Will we fight for them, not against them? Running is only way to protect others from what we become. Maya nodded thoughtfully, then walked over to the fabrication bay's main console. Her fingers danced across the interface with surprising skill for someone who claimed to be just a xenobiologist. What if you didn't have to fight alone? She asked, not looking up from her work. We do not understand, Threx rumbled. What if, when the conditioning kicked in and tried to make you into hegemony weapons, you had a pack leader whose orders were stronger? Ambassador Zethkri felt their neural matrix practically vibrate with alarm. Dr. Chun, surely you're not suggesting? I'm suggesting, Maya said, finally looking up from the console with that distinctly human expression of absolute determination, that the hegemony is about to learn why humans are the only species crazy enough to domesticate apex predators. The fabrication bay's main display lit up with schematics that made every military officer in the observation deck step backward. The designs were elegant, efficient, and absolutely terrifying, not because of their destructive potential, but because of what they implied about the mind that had conceived them. Human Maya, Crixel said slowly. These weapon modifications, they would make us more dangerous than ever before. No, Maya corrected, her smile sharp as a blade. They would make us more dangerous than ever before, because you're not going to be hegemony weapons anymore. She gestured to the 3 Skarn, then to herself. You're going to be pack hunters. Commander Veltar's voice was barely above a whisper. She's going to turn them into an extensions of human tactical doctrine. Worse, Security Chief Vorth muttered, staring at the display in fascination and horror. She's going to turn them into extensions of human protective instincts. Ambassador Zethkri understood, with crystalline clarity, that they were witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. Not just first contact between humans and Skarn, but the birth of something new, a hybrid fighting force that combined Skarn physical capabilities with human, psychological resilience, and tactical creativity. The hegemony had created the perfect soldiers. Maya Chong was about to show them what happened when perfect soldiers chose their own pack leader. With 8 rotations until the hegemony fleet's arrival, the GSV Harmonious Convergence had transformed into something between a diplomatic vessel and a weapons laboratory. Maya's modifications to both the ship systems and the Skarn warriors themselves violated approximately 17 different Council regulations and at least 3 fundamental laws of physics. Ambassador Zethkri found themselves standing in the main briefing chamber, surrounded by the senior staff and 3 genetically engineered super soldiers who were currently debating the finer points of human pack dynamics with their new pack leader. So when human Maya says hold the line, Grekthal was saying, his massive claws clicking against the conference table, she means maintain defensive position until tactical situation changes? No, Maya corrected patiently. When I say hold the line, I mean you hold that position no matter what. Enemy reinforcements, overwhelming firepower, imminent death. doesn't matter. You hold until I tell you otherwise. Threx's weapon systems hummed with interest. Even if holding position means pack death? Especially then, Maya confirmed. That's what pack bonds mean. We protect each other even when it costs us everything. Ambassador Zethkri watched this exchange with growing unease. Human military doctrine was notorious throughout the galaxy for its emphasis on individual sacrifice for collective benefit. But seeing it explained to 3 living weapons of mass destruction added a distinctly ominous dimension to the concept. Dr. Chun, they interjected, perhaps we should discuss the broader tactical situation. The hegemony fleet significantly outguns this vessel. Maya's attention shifted to the main display, which showed the approaching enemy formation. 12 heavy cruisers, 4 dreadnoughts, and the command vessel designated Eternal Dominion, arranged in a pattern that spoke of centuries of military efficiency. They're expecting to face 1 diplomatic vessel with 3 runaway slaves aboard, Maya mused, her expression thoughtful. Standard recapture protocol. Disable the ship, board, activate the conditioning signals, and walk the Skarn back to their cages. A reasonable expectation, Commander Veltar pointed out, considering that's exactly what the situation appears to be. Maya's smile was sharp and predatory. Commander, what's the first rule of human military doctrine? I am not familiar with human military doctrine. Never let the enemy fight the battle they prepared for, Maya said simply. The hegemony is ready to recapture 3 broken slaves. They are not ready to face a pack of motivated humans. Security Chief Vorth's combat instincts prickled. Dr. Chun, I feel compelled to point out that there is only 1 human aboard this vessel. Wrong, Maya replied, gesturing to the 3 Skarn warriors. There are 4 humans aboard this vessel. 3 of them just happen to be wearing Skarn bodies. The implications of that statement sent ripples of unease through the assembled officers. Crixel tilted his massive head in the gesture that had become his version of curiosity. Human Maya means we are no longer Skarn? You're whatever you choose to be, Maya said firmly. The hegemony made you into Skarn weapons. I'm offering you the chance to become human pack members. Same bodies, same capabilities, but completely different loyalties. Ambassador Zethkri activated their translation interface to full sensitivity, trying to understand the subtle dynamics at play. What they detected made their crystalline neural matrix pulse with something approaching awe. Maya wasn't just offering the Skarn warriors a new identity. She was offering them a new species. The pack bonding process had created neural pathways that bypassed their original conditioning by fundamentally altering how they perceived themselves and their place in the universe. The psychological profiles are remarkable, Chief Medical Officer Threndi reported quietly. Their stress responses have shifted from Skarn patterns to something resembling human protective aggression. Their decision-making processes now prioritize pack welfare over individual survival. Most significantly, their neurochemical responses to authority figures have completely reversed. Meaning? Commander Veltar asked. Meaning they now respond to Dr. Chon's commands with the same neurological intensity they once reserved for hegemony controllers, Threndi explained. But the emotional context is completely different. Instead of fear-based compliance, they're exhibiting what humans call loyalty. As if to demonstrate this point, an alert chime sounded through the ship. Communications Officer Yilfek's voice followed immediately. All stations, we're receiving a priority transmission from the hegemony command vessel. They're demanding immediate surrender of the Skarn assets. Maya stood with fluid grace, and the 3 warriors instantly mirrored her movement. The synchronization was unnerving 4 beings, moving as parts of a single organism. Patch them through to the main viewer, Maya said, her voice carrying the particular tone humans used when they were about to do something spectacularly inadvisable. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the bridge of the Eternal Dominion. At its center stood Fleet Commander Zareth Kal of the Hegemony, military caste, a being whose species had evolved specifically for the purpose of controlling others. His presence was a carefully crafted weapon designed to inspire immediate submission in any sentient being. It was. Ambassador Zethkri realized, about to encounter the one species in the galaxy that was pathologically incapable of submitting to anyone. Council vessel. Commander Zareth Kal's voice carried harmonics specifically tuned to trigger obedience responses in most known species. You are harboring stolen hegemony property. Surrender the Skarn units immediately, and your deaths will be swift. Maya stepped forward, placing herself directly in the transmission field. Her posture was relaxed, almost casual, but every predator species in the galaxy would have recognized the coiled tension in her movements. "Commander Zarethkal," she said pleasantly, "I'm Dr. Maya Chun, and I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. You're not here to recapture stolen property. You're here to commit an act of war against the human pack." The hegemony commander's features shifted, a sign of confusion among his species. "Human pack? You are one individual of a species that has barely achieved interstellar travel." Maya's smile was sharp as vacuum exposure. "Commander, you've made two critical errors in your assessment. First, you've assumed that pack size is determined by numbers rather than bonds. Second, you've assumed that technological advancement is more important than psychological resilience." Behind her, the three Skarn warriors moved into formation, not the rigid parade stance of hegemony military doctrine, but the fluid, adaptable positioning of human pack hunters. Their weapon systems hummed to life, but instead of the mechanical precision of programmed soldiers, their movements carried the organic coordination of a team that had learned to think as one. "Commander." Zarethkal's eyes widened as he recognized the impossible sight before him. "That is not possible. Skarn conditioning cannot be overcome. Our psychological engineers spent centuries perfecting the process." "Your psychological engineers," Maya replied conversationally, "never met a species crazy enough to pack bond with apex predators. Grikthal, show the commander what happens when someone threatens our pack." The warrior's response was immediate and terrifying. His weapon systems didn't just activate, they sang, harmonizing with his pack brothers in a deadly chorus that made the ship's hull vibrate. But more than that, his posture, his movements, even his vocalizations had shifted from the mechanical precision of a hegemony weapon to something far more dangerous, the fluid lethality of a human protector. "Commander Zarethkal." Grichtfel's voice carried new harmonics, not the obedient tones of a programmed slave, but the cold certainty of someone who had chosen his own loyalty. "You threaten pack leader Maya. This cannot be allowed." "Commander." Zarethkal stared at the transmission in what appeared to be genuine shock. "Impossible. The conditioning protocols were designed to control slaves." Maya interrupted. "These aren't slaves anymore. They're family." The word family hit the transmission like a gravitational weapon, and Ambassador Zethkri watched as the hegemony commander's carefully controlled expression cracked. His species understood hierarchy, dominance, and control. They had no conceptual framework for the type of voluntary, emotionally driven loyalty Maya had somehow created. "You have 6 rotations to withdraw your fleet," Maya continued pleasantly. "After that, you'll be dealing with something your databases don't have contingency plans for, a human pack defending their territory." The transmission ended, leaving the briefing chamber in stunned silence. Commander Veltar was the first to speak. "Dr. Chun, did you just declare war on the hegemony?" Maya's expression was serene, and somehow that made it infinitely more terrifying. "No, Commander. I just told them what would happen if they chose to declare war on us." The next 4 rotations passed in a blur of impossible activity. Maya had somehow convinced, cajoled, or possibly hypnotized the entire crew of the GSV Harmonious. Convergence into participating in what could charitably be called aggressive defensive preparations, and more, accurately described as the universe's most elaborate suicide mission. Ambassador Zethkri found themselves in the uncomfortable position of watching their carefully ordered diplomatic mission transform into something resembling a military operation designed by someone who had clearly never read the manual on how such things were supposed to work. "Dr. Chun," they said, reviewing the latest modifications to the ship systems, "these tactical preparations are unconventional." Maya looked up from where she was calibrating something that appeared to be part weapon, part sensor array, and part psychological warfare device. The 3 Skarn warriors were assisting her with the delicate work, their massive claws handling components with surprising precision. "Unconventional how?" she asked, genuinely curious. "Well, for one thing, you've converted our diplomatic reception hall into what appears to be a command center designed for coordinating asymmetric warfare across multiple theaters of engagement. Pack coordination requires clear communication channels, Maya replied, as if this explained everything. You've also modified our defensive systems to broadcast what our computers describe as motivational audio frequencies directly into the neural cortex of anyone within range. Pack bonds work better with reinforcement, Maya said, not looking up from her work. The hegemony uses fear-based conditioning. We're using what humans call inspiration. Commander Veltar entered the improvised command center, carrying a datapad that trembled slightly in their manipulator appendages. Dr. Chun, I've completed the analysis you requested on the hegemony fleet composition, and it's worse than we initially calculated. The Eternal Dominion isn't just a command vessel, it's a mobile conditioning facility. They can broadcast psychological control signals across an entire star system. Any Skarn within range will be immediately reduced to slave soldier status. Maya's hands stilled on her equipment. For the first time since the crisis began, she looked genuinely concerned. Range? Approximately 4 astronomical units at full power. The 3 Skarn warriors exchanged glances, a behavior they had learned from their pack leader. Gregthil spoke for all of them. Human Maya conditioning broadcasts at that range cannot be resisted by individual will. Pack bonds may not be strong enough. Maya was quiet for a long moment, her expression cycling through what Ambassador Zethkri was learning to recognize as her problem-solving process. Then her face brightened with the particular expression humans got when they were about to propose something that violated several laws of physics and common sense. How long does the conditioning broadcast take to achieve full effectiveness? She asked. Commander Veltar consulted their datapad. Approximately 30 standard minutes for complete psychological override. And how long does it take for a pack-bonded human to do something really, really stupid? Maya asked, turning to look at the 3 Skarn warriors. Human Maya, Threx rumbled with what might have been amusement. Pack-bonded humans do stupid things immediately. Exactly, Maya said, her smile sharp as a stellar collision, which means we have 30 minutes to get close enough to that command ship to show them why threatening a human's pack is the last mistake they'll ever make. Security Chief Vorth's voice crackled over the communication system. Dr. Chun, please clarify. Are you suggesting we attack a hegemony dreadnought with a diplomatic vessel? I'm suggesting we attack a hegemony dreadnought with a pack of humans who happen to be riding a diplomatic vessel, Maya corrected. There's a difference. Ambassador Zethkri felt their neural matrix pulse with what they were beginning to recognize as chronic anxiety. Dr. Chun, even assuming your pack bonding modifications work, this vessel is not equipped for combat against capital ships. Maya's expression shifted into what the ambassador had learned was her teaching mode, patient but somehow ominous. Ambassador, you're thinking like a civilized being. Civilized beings fight fair. They use appropriate weapons for appropriate targets. They follow rules of engagement, and humans don't? Humans, Maya said with obvious pride, fight to win. And when you're fighting to protect your pack, there are no inappropriate weapons, only insufficient levels of creativity. She gestured to the modified systems around them. The hegemony expects to face 3 runaway slaves and a diplomatic vessel. Instead, they're going to encounter a pack of humans with access to advanced technology, no respect for conventional tactics, and absolutely nothing to lose. Crixel's weapon systems hummed with interest. Human Maya has planned for defeating superior force. Human Maya has planned for making superior force irrelevant, she corrected. See, the thing about overwhelming firepower is that it only matters if you can bring it to bear. And it's very hard to bring overwhelming firepower to bear when your target is inside your defensive perimeter. The implications of that statement sent ripples of unease through the command center. Commander Veltar's voice was carefully controlled. Dr. Chun, are you suggesting a boarding action? I'm suggesting a family reunion, Maya replied. The hegemony wants their property back. Let's give them a chance to collect it personally. 2 rotations before the hegemony fleet's arrival, Maya made an announcement that challenged every assumption about human psychology that the Galactic Council had ever formulated. I'm going to surrender, she said calmly, addressing the assembled senior staff in the main briefing chamber. The silence that followed was so profound that the ship's atmospheric recyclers seemed unnaturally loud. Ambassador Zethkri was the first to find their voice. Dr. Chun, I'm not certain I understand. I'm going to contact the Hegemony fleet and offer to surrender myself. The three scarn in exchange for safe passage for the harmonious convergence, Maya explained, as if discussing lunch plans. That's suicide, Security Chief Vorth stated flatly. That's pack tactics, Maya corrected. The Hegemony wants to recondition 3 runaway slaves. They're not prepared for what happens when those slaves have a pack leader who's coming along for the ride. Commander Veltar leaned forward, their military training warring with their growing understanding of human psychology. Dr. Chun, even assuming you could maintain the pack bond during transport to their vessel, you would be outnumbered approximately 3,000 to 4. Maya's smile was sharp as vacuum exposure. Commander, you're still thinking like a civilized being. 3,000 to 4 are terrible odds if you're planning to fight fair. Her expression shifted into something that made every predator species on the ship step back involuntarily. But we're not planning to fight fair. We're planning to fight human. Over the next rotation, Maya's preparations took on an almost ritualistic quality. She moved through the ship, speaking privately with each member of the crew, offering what appeared to be personal farewells. But Ambassador Zethkri, monitoring the conversations through the ship's security systems, realized she was doing something far more significant. Thought she was creating backup pack bonds. Commander Veltar, she said during one such conversation, I need you to promise me something. What kind of promise? If the primary pack doesn't make it back, I need you to remember what we accomplished here. The Scarn aren't weapons, they're people. They deserve the chance to choose their own lives. Similar conversations occurred throughout the ship. Maya wasn't just saying goodbye. She was creating a network of emotional connections that would survive even if she didn't. She was ensuring that her pack would have allies, advocates, and friends long after the current crisis ended. It was. Ambassador Zethkri realized perhaps the most human thing they had ever witnessed. 6 rotations after first contact, Maya stood in the main docking bay, wearing what appeared to be a combination of diplomatic formal wear and combat armor. The 3 Scarn warriors flanked her, their own equipment modified beyond recognition. Instead of the sleek, efficient weapons of Hegemony design, they now carried an eclectic mix of Council technology, human modifications, and what appeared to be improvised psychological warfare devices. Final systems check, Maya said. Activating the pack bonding neural links, the transformation was immediate and unsettling. The 4 beings, human and Scarn, moved with perfect synchronization, their individual personalities blending into something that was simultaneously more and less than the sum of its parts. When Maya turned her head, the Scarn warriors instinctively adjusted their positions. When Grugthol shifted his weapon stance, Maya's hand moved to echo the gesture. They had become a single entity inhabiting 4 bodies. Ambassador, Maya said, her voice carrying harmonics that suggested the other 3 were speaking in unison. Please inform the Hegemony that we're ready for pickup. The next few rotations passed intense preparation. The Hegemony fleet maintained position at exactly 4 astronomical units close enough to project their conditioning signals, far enough to avoid any desperate defensive measures from the Council vessel. When the transport beam engaged, Maya and the 3 Scarn warriors vanished in a cascade of energy that left the docking bay feeling strangely empty. Ambassador Zethkri immediately activated the ship's long-range sensors, trying to monitor the situation aboard the Eternal Dominion. What they saw defied several fundamental assumptions about prisoner transfers. Maya and the Scarn weren't being escorted to holding cells. They were walking calmly through the Hegemony ship's corridors, as if they owned the place. Hegemony guards flanked them, weapons ready, but the pack's body language suggested they considered the armed escort to be an honor guard rather than captors. How are they doing that? Commander Veltar wondered aloud. Pack confidence, Chief. Medical Officer Threndi reported, monitoring the biometric data from Maya's neural link. Her stress levels are actually lower than baseline. She genuinely doesn't consider herself to be in danger, but she's aboard a Hegemony dreadnought, surrounded by thousands of hostile aliens. Security Chief Vorth pointed out. No, Ambassador, Zethkri said slowly, understanding beginning to dawn. She's aboard a Hegemony dreadnought with her pack. From her perspective, she has all the backup she needs. The realization sent ripples of unease through the assembled officers. Maya wasn't approaching this as a desperate gambit. or a suicide mission. She was approaching it as a family outing, with the specific goal of permanently solving a problem that threatened her pack members, and based on her confident stride through the enemy ship's corridors, she apparently considered success to be inevitable. The conditioning chamber aboard the Eternal Dominion was a masterpiece of psychological warfare. Every surface, every sound, every frequency of light had been precisely calibrated to break the will of any sentient being unfortunate enough to be brought there. The air itself seemed to carry undertones of despair. Maya looked around with the detached interest of a professional evaluating a colleague's work. "Impressive," she said conversationally to Fleet Commander Zareth Kal, who stood behind a protective barrier designed to shield him from his own psychological weapons. Classic sensory overload combined with isolation anxiety triggers. Very thorough. The commander's features showed confusion, an emotion his species rarely experienced. "You should be experiencing crippling terror, human. These frequencies are designed to induce complete psychological breakdown in any known species." "Known species," Maya agreed cheerfully. "But you've never tested it on a pack-bonded human, have you?" The three Skarn warriors stood beside her, their massive forms somehow radiating calm, despite being surrounded by the devices that had once enslaved them. Their pack bond with Maya created a buffer zone of shared, psychological strength that rendered the hegemony's weapons ineffective. "Begin the conditioning sequence," Commander Zareth Kal ordered, his voice carrying undertones of frustrated authority. The chamber filled with the precise frequencies, visual patterns, and neurochemical triggers that had broken thousands of Skarn minds over the centuries. The effect was immediate and devastating for anyone who wasn't part of a pack bond with a species that had evolved to hunt in groups. Across hostile environments, Maya felt the assault on her consciousness like a distant storm present but unable to touch her core identity. Through the neural link, she felt Greek Thal, Threx, and Crixel experiencing something similar. The conditioning signals tried to isolate them, to make each individual believe they were alone and helpless. But the pack bond provided an unshakable foundation of shared identity. "Interesting," Maya murmured, as the first wave of conditioning signals washed over them without effect. "You know what your biggest mistake was?" Commander Zareth Kal's eyes narrowed. "Explain." "You assumed that individual consciousness was a weakness to be exploited," Maya said, her voice carrying new harmonics as the pack bond deepened under pressure. "But humans don't have individual consciousness when we're pack bonded. We have distributed consciousness. You can't break something that isn't actually separate to begin with." The conditioning signals intensified, reaching levels that should have reduced any sentient being to a gibbering wreck. Instead, Maya and the three Skarn began to move with even greater synchronization, their shared identity strengthening under assault. "Impossible," the commander whispered. "The psychological framework cannot accommodate this level of resistance." "The psychological framework," Maya replied, her smile sharp as a stellar collision, "was designed by beings who've never experienced real pack bonds. You understand dominance, submission, control, and compliance. You have no concept of voluntary cooperation based on mutual affection." Grekthul spoke, his voice carrying harmonics that suggested the other pack members were speaking in unison. "Commander Zareth Kal, pack bonds make us stronger, not weaker. Pack bonds make us whole, not broken. Your conditioning cannot touch what was given freely." The massive warrior began to move, not with the mechanical precision of hegemony programming, but with the fluid grace of someone who had chosen his own loyalty. His weapon systems came online, but instead of the standard hegemony configurations, they hummed with the modifications Maya had designed, weapons optimized not for conquest but for protection. Commander Zareth Kal took a step backward, his carefully maintained composure cracking. "Guards, activate containment protocols." The chamber's defenses activated energy barriers, neural dampeners, and physical restraints designed to contain even the most dangerous Skarn warrior. They were impressive, efficient, and completely useless against opponents who fought as a coordinated unit rather than isolated individuals. Maya and the three Skarn moved like parts of a single organism, each member anticipating and compensating for the other's actions. Where one was blocked, another found an opening. Where one was threatened, the others provided protection. The hegemony's containment systems had been designed for individual prisoners. They had no protocols for dealing with a group that shared not just tactics, but consciousness itself. Phase 2, Maya said calmly, as Threx's modified weapon systems began interfacing with the chamber's control networks. Phase 2 of what? Commander Zareth Kal demanded. Maya's expression shifted into something that made the hegemony commander's evolutionary instincts scream warnings about apex predators. Phase 2 of showing you what happens when you threaten a human's pack. The conditioning chamber systems began to turn themselves inside out. Threx, guided by Maya's understanding of psychological warfare and enhanced by the pack's shared problem-solving capabilities, started reprogramming the hegemony's own weapons. Instead of broadcasting signals designed to break minds, the chamber began projecting the neurochemical patterns associated with pack bonding, mutual protection, and voluntary cooperation. Throughout the Eternal Dominion, hegemony crew members suddenly found themselves experiencing emotions their species had never evolved to handle: empathy, selfless concern for others, and the overwhelming desire to protect rather than control. "What are you doing?" Commander Zareth Kal's voice carried notes of genuine panic. "Teaching," Maya replied simply. "Your species understands dominance hierarchies, but you've never experienced pack bonds. Consider this a free educational demonstration." Crixel's modified systems had interfaced with the ship's communication networks, broadcasting the pack bonding frequencies throughout the entire fleet. On 12 heavy cruisers and 4 dreadnoughts, hegemony officers suddenly found themselves unable to issue orders that would harm others, unable to accept commands that violated their newly awakened protective instincts. The most powerful military force in this quadrant of the galaxy was discovering what it felt like to care about someone other than themselves, and they were discovering that the experience was utterly, completely addictive. Aboard the GSV Harmonious Convergence, Ambassador Zethkri watched the sensor readings with growing amazement and terror. The hegemony fleet, which had maintained perfect military formation for the past several rotations, was beginning to scatter. Wasn't the right word. Dance might be more accurate. "Commander Veltar," they said, their voice carefully modulated to hide their bewilderment. "Are you interpreting these sensor readings correctly?" The military officer consulted their instruments with increasing confusion. "According to our scans, the hegemony vessels are conducting what appears to be synchronized maneuvers, but not in any tactical formation I recognize. It's almost like they're playing," Security Chief Vorth finished, their tone suggesting they couldn't believe their own words. Through the communication array, they could hear fragments of transmissions from the hegemony fleet, not the crisp, efficient military communications they expected, but something that sounded disturbingly like excited chatter. "Formation Alpha 7 is experiencing unprecedented crew cooperation rates. Weapon systems being voluntarily modified to non-lethal configurations. Request permission to assist with Dreadnought 4's navigation difficulties. Commander, the crew is asking if we can adopt the human pack bonding protocols as permanent operational procedures." Ambassador Zethkri activated the ship's long-range visual scanners, focusing on the Eternal Dominion. What they saw defied every assumption they had ever made about hegemony military efficiency. Hegemony crew members were moving through the ship's corridors, not in the rigid, hierarchical patterns of their species, but in loose, cooperative groups that seemed to prioritize mutual assistance over rank structure. Maintenance teams were working together with unprecedented efficiency. Bridge officers were consulting with lower-ranked personnel as equals rather than subordinates. The most terrifying military organization in the galaxy was learning how to cooperate. Ambassador, Communications Officer Yilthek reported, "I'm receiving a transmission from Dr. Chun aboard the Eternal Dominion. Put her through immediately." Maya's voice filled the bridge, carrying undertones of satisfaction and what sounded suspiciously like affection. "Ambassador, I wanted to give you a status update. The situation here is developing interestingly. Dr. Chun, please clarify the tactical situation." "Well, the good news is that the pack bonding experiment was completely successful. The hegemony conditioning protocols are now permanently offline throughout the fleet. And the bad news?" Maya's laughter carried harmonics that made several species on the bridge stepped back nervously. There isn't any bad news, Ambassador. The Hegemony fleet has just experienced the most rapid cultural evolution in galactic history. They've gone from a species that understands only dominance and submission to a species that's discovering the joys of voluntary cooperation. Commander Veltar leaned forward. Dr. Chun, what exactly did you do? I introduced them to pack bonding, Maya replied. Simply, turns out, once a species experiences genuine emotional connection with others, they find it very difficult to go back to the old ways of thinking. The Hegemony crew members are currently arguing about who gets to help with ship maintenance, competing to see who can be most helpful to their colleagues, and generally acting like they've discovered the meaning of life. Ambassador Zethkri felt their neural matrix pulse with something approaching awe. Dr. Chun, are you suggesting that you've converted the entire Hegemony fleet to human psychological patterns? Not converted, Maya corrected. Evolved. They're still themselves, just better versions of themselves. Versions that understand cooperation, mutual protection, and the value of voluntary loyalty. The implications of that statement sent ripples of unease through the assembled officers. Chief Medical Officer Threndy was the first to voice what everyone was thinking. Dr. Chun, if the Hegemony fleet has genuinely adopted pack bonding behaviors, they represent a fundamental shift in the galactic power balance. A military force that fights to protect rather than conquer, that prioritizes cooperation over dominance. Exactly, Maya said, and her voice carried notes of deep satisfaction. The galaxy just became a much safer place. Over the next several rotations, the truth of Maya's statement became increasingly apparent. The Hegemony fleet, instead of continuing their mission of recapturing runaway slaves, began actively seeking out other enslaved populations throughout their territory. Ships that had once been instruments of oppression became liberation forces, freeing entire worlds from the control systems their own species had created. Fleet Commander Zarathkal, speaking in a voice that carried entirely new harmonic patterns, sent a formal communication to the Galactic Council. The Hegemony military forces hereby renounce all territorial claims based on conquest or subjugation. We pledge to dedicate our resources to the protection of all sentient beings within our sphere of influence, with particular emphasis on the liberation and rehabilitation of previously enslaved populations. We formally request guidance from human pack bonding specialists to assist in the psychological development of our personnel. Furthermore, we wish to extend an invitation to Dr. Maya Chun to serve as an advisor in establishing new protocols for interspecies cooperation based on voluntary association rather than hierarchical dominance. The Hegemony as a conquering empire is hereby dissolved. Long live the Protectorate. Ambassador Zethkri read the transmission twice and a third time before the full implications sank in. Dr. Chun has just ended a 1,000-year empire and replaced it with a mutual protection society, using nothing but emotional manipulation and 3 former slave soldiers. Not manipulation, Commander Veltar corrected quietly. Education. She taught them what they were missing. 3 rotations later, Maya and the 3 Skarn warriors returned to the harmonious convergence. The transformation in all 4 was immediately apparent. They moved with the easy confidence of beings who had faced their greatest fears and emerged victorious. But more than that, they radiated something that Ambassador Zethkri found difficult to quantify. It wasn't pride, exactly, or satisfaction, or even relief. It was the particular contentment that came from having accomplished something genuinely meaningful. Pack Leader Maya, Grekthal said, as they entered the main briefing chamber, requests permission to present formal report on pack activities. Ambassador Zethkri noted the shift in terminology with interest. Maya was no longer just human Maya. To the Skarn, she had become their formally recognized pack leader, a role that carried connotations no Galactic Council language had words for. Report granted, the ambassador replied formally. Maya stepped forward, her expression serious but somehow radiant. Ambassador, I'm pleased to report that the Hegemony threat to the Skarn people has been permanently resolved. More than that, we've established the framework for a new type of interspecies cooperation that could revolutionize how the galaxy approaches conflict resolution. She gestured to the 3 warriors beside her. Grekthal, Threx, and Crixel are no longer refugees, running from their past. They're the founding members of something entirely new. A volunteer protection force dedicated to helping other enslaved populations achieve the same freedom they found. Ambassador Zethgri leaned forward. Dr. Chun, while your accomplishments are remarkable, I must ask about the broader implications. You've fundamentally altered the psychology of an entire species. The ethical considerations alone are exactly what you'd expect them to be, Maya interrupted gently. We didn't force anyone to change. We simply offered them the opportunity to experience something they'd never had before, genuine emotional connection with others. Every hegemony crew member who accepted the pack bonding modifications did so voluntarily after understanding exactly what the process involved. Threx rumbled his agreement. Pack leader Maya speaks truth. Hegemony soldiers, not forced to change, offered choice. Many choose pack bonds because pack bonds feel better than dominance hierarchies. And those who didn't choose the modifications, Commander Veltar asked, were free to return to their original territories with full amnesty. Maya replied. About 15% of the fleet crews opted out. They're currently establishing a traditional hegemony colony in the Outer Rim, where they can maintain their original social structures without interfering with anyone else. Crixel's weapon systems hummed with satisfaction. Pack tactics work because pack tactics respect individual choice. Force creates resistance. Choice creates loyalty. Ambassador Zethgri consulted their datapad, reviewing the reports that had been flooding in from across the galaxy. Dr. Chun, I've been receiving communications from 17 different species requesting pack bonding consultations. It appears that word of your success has spread. Maya's smile was warm and genuine. That's wonderful, Ambassador. One of the things we learned during this experience is that pack bonding isn't exclusive to humans, or even to specific species combinations. It's a psychological framework that can work for any beings willing to prioritize the welfare of others alongside their own. She paused, her expression growing thoughtful. We're thinking of establishing a formal program, the Interspecies Cooperation Initiative. The goal would be to help other species discover the same kinds of voluntary emotional bonds that made this mission successful. Under whose authority? Security Chief Vorth asked. No authority, Maya replied simply. That's the point. Pack bonds can't be imposed from above. They have to grow naturally between individuals who choose to care about each other. Ambassador Zethgri felt their neural matrix pulse with something that might have been inspiration. Dr. Chun, are you proposing to teach the galaxy how to love each other? Maya's laugh was warm and rich, carrying harmonics that somehow made every being in the chamber feel more connected to those around them. Ambassador, I'm proposing to give the galaxy the tools to teach itself. The capacity for emotional bonding exists in every sentient species. It just gets buried under layers of survival instinct, territorial behavior, and cultural conditioning. She gestured to the transformed relationship between herself and the three Skarn warriors. What we've demonstrated is that those barriers can be overcome, that beings from completely different evolutionary backgrounds can form genuine, lasting emotional connections that make all of them stronger. Grickthil stepped forward, his massive form somehow radiating gentle contentment. Ambassador Zethgri, Pack Leader Maya speaks of important truth. Before Pack bonds, Grickthul was weapon, had purpose, but no meaning. Now Grickthul has both purpose and meaning, has pack, has family, has home. The simple sincerity in the warrior's voice sent ripples of emotion through the assembled beings. Ambassador Zethgri realized they were witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. Not just first contact between species, but the birth of a new type of relationship that transcended traditional categories of alliance, treaty, or cooperation. Maya had created something that the galaxy had never seen before, a truly voluntary, emotionally based interspecies family. 6 rotations later, the GSV Harmonious Convergence had been transformed from a diplomatic vessel into something entirely new. The mobile headquarters of the Interspecies Cooperation Initiative. Representatives from dozens of species had requested passage, not as passengers, but as students eager to learn about the pack bonding techniques that had peacefully resolved one of the galaxy's most intractable conflicts. Ambassador Zethgri stood in what had once been the formal diplomatic reception hall, watching Maya conduct what she called a basic pack dynamics seminar for a group that included Veilthrin crystal singers, Altarian naval officers, Krekstar warriors, and a delegation of former hegemony soldiers who had volunteered to help teach others about the transition from dominance-based to cooperation-based social structures. The sight was unprecedented in galactic history. Beings from species that had been enemies for centuries, sitting together in circles, practicing the fundamental exercises of emotional bonding. The key principle, Maya was saying, her voice carrying the patient tones of a teacher who genuinely enjoyed her work, is voluntary vulnerability. Pack bonding only works when all participants choose to lower their psychological defenses and trust each other with their emotional well-being. A Krekstar warrior raised one of his 4 primary manipulator arms. Pack leader Maya, warrior training teaches constant vigilance. How does pack member maintain combat effectiveness while practicing vulnerability? Maya's smile was warm and encouraging. Excellent question, Vorthgel. The answer is that vulnerability within the pack makes you stronger in all other contexts. When you know absolutely that your pack members will support you, you can take risks and face challenges that would be impossible for an individual. She gestured to Gurk Thul, who was demonstrating advanced pack coordination techniques with a mixed group of Skarn, humans, and Veilthrins. Notice how the Skarn warriors are more effective now than they were under hegemony conditioning. They're not weaker because they've formed emotional bonds. They're stronger because they fight for something they love rather than something they fear. Ambassador Zithkri observed the demonstration with growing amazement. The mixed species groups were exhibiting coordination levels that shouldn't have been possible between beings with completely different evolutionary backgrounds, sensory systems, and cognitive structures. Yet somehow, the pack bonding process had created communication pathways that transcended those differences. Commander Veltar approached, carrying a datapad filled with reports from across the galaxy. Ambassador, I have updates from the various worlds that have implemented pack bonding programs. Summarize, please. The results are remarkable. Conflict resolution times have decreased by an average of 70%. Interspecies cooperation indices have increased by factors that our mathematical models can't adequately express. Most significantly, we're receiving reports of spontaneous pack bond formation between species that have never had peaceful contact before. Ambassador Zethkri reviewed the data with growing amazement. Commander, these results suggest that Dr. Chan's pack bonding techniques are becoming self-propagating. Beings are teaching themselves to form emotional connections without formal instruction. That appears to be correct, sir. It's almost as if the capacity for pack bonding was always present in most species, just waiting for someone to demonstrate that it was possible. Across the hall, Maya was addressing a concern from one of the former hegemony soldiers. Pack leader Maya, hegemony conditioning taught that emotional attachment leads to weakness, inefficiency, compromised judgment. How do we overcome cycles of teaching that emotional connection dangerous? Maya's expression grew thoughtful, and she considered the question with obvious respect for its complexity. That's one of the hardest parts of the transition, Kethmer. Your species spent centuries learning to view emotional connection as a liability. Unlearning that conditioning takes time, patience, and a lot of practice. She stood and moved to the center of the mixed species group. But here's what I want everyone to understand. Emotional connection doesn't compromise your judgment, enhances it. When you care deeply about others, you think more carefully about the consequences of your actions. When you have pack bonds to maintain, you become more creative in finding solutions that benefit everyone. Threx rumbled his agreement. Pack leader Maya speaks truth. Before pack bonds, Threx followed orders without thinking. Now Threx thinks about consequences, about alternatives, about whether actions help or harm pack members. Makes better decisions, not worse decisions. The former hegemony soldier nodded slowly, his expression showing the careful consideration his species brought to important concepts. Pack bonds require thinking about others, not just self. Could make decisions more complex, but also more complete. Exactly, Maya confirmed. Complexity isn't the same as confusion. When you factor in the welfare of your pack members, you have more information to work with, not less. Better information leads to better decisions. Ambassador Zethgri watched this exchange with profound admiration. Maya had not only revolutionized interspecies relations, she had created a teaching methodology that could help any being overcome psychological conditioning that limited their capacity for emotional connection. The implications were staggering. If pack bonding techniques could be successfully taught across species barriers, the galaxy was looking at the possibility of genuine, lasting peace based not on treaties or mutual deterrence, but on voluntary emotional commitments between individuals who had chosen to care about each other's welfare. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority transmission. Communications Officer Yilthek's voice filled the hall. All stations were receiving a communication from the Galactic Council Emergency Assembly. They're requesting immediate consultation on what they're calling the pack bonding phenomenon. Maya looked up from her teaching group, her expression shifting into what Ambassador Zethgri had learned was her administrative mode: competent, focused, but somehow reluctant. I suppose they want to regulate it, she said with a slight sigh. Dr. Chun, Ambassador Zethgri said carefully, the Council's concerns are not entirely unreasonable. You've initiated changes that are spreading across the galaxy faster than our monitoring systems can track. The social and political implications are exactly what they should be, Maya interrupted gently. Ambassador, pack bonding can't be regulated because it can't be imposed. It's a voluntary emotional process that happens between individuals. The only way to control it would be to prevent beings from caring about each other. She gestured to the diverse group of beings around them, all engaged in the patient work of learning to form emotional connections across species barriers. Would you really want to prevent this? Ambassador Zethgri looked around the hall, taking in the sight of former enemies working together with unprecedented cooperation. Beings from dozens of different worlds, sharing knowledge and emotional support. Warriors who had been weapons learning to see themselves as protectors. No, they admitted, I would not want to prevent this, but I suspect the Council will want to understand how to manage the implications. Maya's smile was warm and somehow sad. Then I suppose we'd better go explain to them that the most important things in the universe can't be managed. They can only be experienced. 1 standard year later, Ambassador Zethgri stood in the observation deck of the newly commissioned ICI cooperative venture, watching the most remarkable sight in galactic history, the first interspecies pack bonding convention. Representatives from over 300 species had gathered in the space around the former hegemony homeworld, now rechristened New Harmony, to share techniques, experiences, and innovations in voluntary emotional bonding across species barriers. The space around the planet was filled with vessels of every conceivable design, from massive Krekstar battleships that had been converted to refugee assistance platforms to tiny Veilthrin exploration pods that now served as mobile counseling centers. Maya stood beside them, no longer the lone human xenobiologist who had boarded their ship a year ago. The transformation wasn't physical. She looked much the same, but her presence had acquired a quality that made beings from across the galaxy seek her out for guidance, comfort, and the particular type of wisdom that came from having fundamentally changed how the universe understood relationships. Regrets, Dr. Chun? The ambassador asked quietly. Maya considered the question with her characteristic thoughtfulness. About which part? About giving up your career as a xenobiologist to become ... Whatever it is you've become. Maya's laugh was warm and rich, carrying harmonics that had become familiar throughout the galaxy, the sound of someone who had found their true purpose. Ambassador, I'm still a xenobiologist. It's just that now, instead of studying how alien species work, I'm helping them figure out how to work together. Through the observation deck's transparent aluminum, they could see the impossible sight of the galaxy's transformation made visible. Former hegemony dreadnoughts working alongside Council peacekeeping vessels to establish new colonies for liberated slave populations. Skarn warriors serving as protective escorts for scientific expeditions to dangerous worlds. Mixed species crews on exploration vessels that functioned more like extended families than military units. The Galactic Council finally approved the formal recognition of pack bonding relationships as a legitimate form of interspecies cooperation, Ambassador Zithkri reported, somewhat reluctantly, but they approved it. And the regulatory framework they wanted to impose? Abandoned after the preliminary studies showed that any attempt to formalize pact bonding procedures reduced their effectiveness to zero. The ambassador admitted, it appears that genuine emotional connection cannot, in fact, be bureaucratized. Maya's expression showed traces of the satisfaction she had carried since the day she first sat down with 3 terrified Skarn warriors and offered them something their species had never experienced: unconditional acceptance. Good, she said simply. Some things are too important to be turned into policy. They need to be lived, not legislated. The ambassador chuckled softly, his mandibles clicking in quiet amusement. It seems the universe agrees with you. The Council's own sociologists are calling this the bonding era. Some are even suggesting we mark a new calendar epoch. Maya's gaze remained on the swirling dance of ships and species beyond the viewport. Call it what you like. What matters is that it continues. Their conversation was interrupted by the gentle chime of an incoming message. Zethkri glanced at the display and raised an eyebrow ridge. It seems your next appointment is early. A delegation of the Colon matriarchs wishes to discuss integrating bonding practices into their clan structures, and the Vion have requested your guidance in establishing emotional protocols for their diplomatic corps. Maya smiled, that familiar warmth radiating from her. Let them come, one bond at a time, Ambassador. As they turned to leave the observation deck, the stars beyond shimmered, not just with light, but with potential. Where once the galaxy had been a vast expanse of cold, indifferent space, it was now a tapestry of connections, fragile, imperfect, but undeniably alive dot, and at its center stood a single human who had dared to ask a simple question that forever changed the cosmos. What if the greatest strength in the universe isn't power, but connection?